I hope he addresses Baizhu versus Kokomi versus Barbara versus Yao Yao and Nilou Bloom. Oh, I fucking forgot about this again. Honestly, I'm gonna be real with you, okay? Baizhu is probably the worst out of those four for Nilou Bloom. Probably like this, and then like this. 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 I don't know. Probably. And like this. I don't know if I'd put Tohnari here or here. He's like in limbo somewhere between these two. And then probably this. Like D tier here is not like Dea, right? It's like where D tier is the worst Dendro unit and S tier is the best Dendro unit. This would probably be the order. I'm putting these three together because, like, I don't know which one I'd rank higher. It really just depends, right? And, like, the main thing about Baizhu and the reason why I don't like him that much is because Yao Yao is also there, right? And obviously, if you don't care about healing at all, then both Yao Yao and Baizhu go down, right? And if you really, really care about healing, I don't think they go above Nahida ever, actually. And like, when I try to evaluate characters like this, I try my best to give the kind of evaluation that will apply to most people, right? Like, I don't use Yao Yao that often, and in a lot of teams, I would rather use DMC over Yao Yao. But I do understand her value, right? And her value is very much existent and is very, like, important to many people, even if it's not all that great for me, right? Definitely spread is too good to not be in A tier. Yeah, but also, it's so bad in AoE. Right? You'd probably be better off with EM Sense, yes, Sorcerer Supreme. Right, like, when you think about it this way, right? How much worse would an Al-Haytham team be compared to a Tohnari team in single target? Well, if you play your teams well and they're the right teams for each character, the Tohnari team can pull out ahead, but it won't be by that much. Now, ask the same question, but the other way around. How much worse would a Tohnari team be in AoE than an Al-Haytham team? Well, quite a bit worse, actually. Like, of course you can make an argument for a Tohnari being here. But when I do these, my point isn't to, like, look at what scenarios I care about and then evaluate the characters according to that. The point is to try to, like, give general recommendations that will apply to more people, basically. And the reality is that a lot of people don't want to build a character that they're only going to be using in like, specific types of content. They usually care more about a character's strong suit. Not every character can be good in all scenarios. Yeah, but like, how much better would a Tohnari team be than versus an Al-Haytham team? Well, if you're looking at only Quicken, a decent amount better, but Al-Haytham has pretty good Quick Bloom and Hyper Bloom teams as well. And those teams do very well in single target, right? Like, there's no question in my mind that Al-Haytham is a better unit than Tohnari for me. And for most people. There will be situations where Tohnari can perform better, but they're few and far between. And that's enough for me to, like, put him down. Why is Collei so low? Because she's the worst Dendro unit. A tier is not ordered, no. And B tier is not ordered either. I think this can also be argued for. Don't think Kaveh will be more useful than Collei. I think that's a fair argument, kinda. Like, Collei has some use, right? Like, the main things that she can do is she can front load. Like, if you give her Sakbo, she can front load Dendro application, which is actually a pretty good way for the Nilou teams to deal with enemies that have short uptime windows, like the Weena, right? If you look at like Nilou, like high investment Nilou speedruns of this Abyss, the good runs often use Collei, because with Sakbo and like R5 Sakbo plus her E, you have really good front-loaded Dendro application that can like let you take advantage of the short DPS uptimes that you have when the Weednut comes out of the ground. That's one of the things that she can do well. The other thing that she can do well is she's like a fine unit for aggravate teams, and because she's a bow user, she can use the elegy, which is generally like the best weapon for those teams. The main like downside for that is that that slightly higher team DPS that you'll get from elegy for most people will not be worth losing a healer, and you would much rather have Yao Yao over Collei instead of like Kuki over Fischl or Jean over Kazuha, right? Plus, Fischl can use elegy as well. And because of that, while she can be used in aggravate, I'd say that with Yao Yao's release, if you have Yao Yao, there's never really a good reason to use her in aggravate. Unless it's like just trying to be a speedrun. But then at that point, if you have Nahida, you'd probably want to use her. And if you're speedrunning, you probably have Nahida. Like if you're an account that goes for speedruns on Quicken teams, you're probably gonna have Nahida. The thing about Kaveh is that, yeah, he's kind of bad, and his kit is all over the place, but he has a Dendro infusion, meaning that he's inherently gonna be a pretty decent Dendro driver for Hyperbloom teams. Will he be particularly good? No. But he'll work. And his Dendro application in AoE is actually pretty decent, because he has a pretty large range on his normal attacks with his wallet. Or suitcase or whatever. Collei has a Dendro infusion on her charge attack, true. But, in my opinion, Kaveh's Dendro infusion, even though his kit has anti-synergy with Hyperbloom, his Dendro infusion is actually enough to put him ahead of Collei. But I think it would be fair to argue for Collei being above him. That being said, when you introduce, like, clunkiness, Collei just feels bad to play. Even in the teams where she's good, because she has such long lockout frames where you can't dash or jump or swap or do anything, after using her E, it's like almost a full fucking second where you're committed to your animation, you can't do anything, and you don't have iframes. She just feels really bad to use. And her abilities miss all the time, which is fucking cringe. Now, I haven't played Kaveh yet, but from what I've seen of his animations, it doesn't look like he has the same kind of problems, right? We feels crafting now? I mean, no. I'm not saying she's bad because she feels worse. I gave the reasons why overall I consider her to be worse. And one of those reasons is, yeah, she feels like fucking garbage to use. It's not just that she feels bad to use. The reason why she feels bad to use is because she has very long logout frames, which is not like feels crafting. Like that is a thing that she has objectively. Very long animations that don't give you iframes. And in the teams where you get the most value out of her, you use her on Sackbow, which means that it happens twice. She's like, oh, I see. Doesn't Yao Yao and Baiju's value diminish for most people because of Kuki outside of Bloom teams? Yesn't. I'd say that Baizhu is more affected by that than Yao Yao. Because one of Yao Yao's strengths is how well she synergizes with Nilou teams, right? Where you can't use Kuki. Because Baizhu is a bit more single target focused, then he has a bit more natural synergy with Hyperbloom. Where you might actually use Kuki. That being said, though, there's still Sino teams, right? Where Baizhu will work a lot better than Kuki in a lot of situations. If I had to choose between Nahida and Nilou, who should I pick? Nahida 100%. Nilou, if you don't have Nahida, is not the same unit. She has basically the same strength, but she goes from being a unit that's like not that great in single target to a unit that just doesn't work in single target. Like, I'm telling you this now so that you don't end up fucking regretting it instantly, but it's very possible if you go for Nilou and not Nahida. Like, if you go for Nilou and you don't have Nahida, it's very possible that you play her and then you realize I'm not having any fucking fun. What's the best Nilou formation? Who's the trigger? It kind of depends, right? Like, the thing about Nilou teams is that, like, they're... First of all, the way that Nilou's E works is a lot like Barbara's E. In the sense that... Let me get Zhongli so I don't fucking mauled. see how, like, the seeds are getting generated at, like, staggered intervals? Because Barbara's E applies Hydro around her whenever a new enemy enters the AoE. With Nilou, it's every 0.5 seconds. But what that means is if you get it against one enemy, and then you walk forward and now there's two enemy in your AoE, then you'll have your first wave, your first, like, instance of Hydro application, which is, again, once every 0.5 seconds, it will create a seed. And then you move forward and your second instance of Hydro application doesn't create a seed on the first one because of ICD, but does create a seed on the second one. Which means that you can effectively use that mechanic when you're against a lot of enemies to cheat out so many more seeds from Nilou's E, right? And when you're against 4 enemies, usually you'd be capped at 2 per 0.5 seconds, which is 2 per Hydro application. But because your Hydro application is every 0.5 seconds, but with ICD, if it's staggered between all the enemies, which is very often, like, it very often will be because you don't spawn inside of a group of enemies, right? You walk into a group of enemies, and because the Hydro app, like, the Hydro instances are really fast, right? 2 per second, by the time you walk on the first one, you'll have 1, and then you walk to the middle, and you'll have, like, it will be staggered most of the time. And as such, you just cheat out significantly more blooms than what should theoretically be possible without that mechanic, right? But what that means is that there's just so... And that's like only one of the many things that make it so that Nilou teams are really hard to calculate because there's just so many different factors at play. Where, like, if you're against 4 enemies, depending on where they spawn, depending on what their attack patterns are, with the same HP, you might kill them, like, almost twice as fast if everything is favorable to you. Right? Because of that,